So guys, what is going on? I hope you guys are well. Let's talk some boxing. Let's get straight into it. So some big news. I'm going to cram two videos in one here. So Eddie Hearn, in a recent interview with Sky Sports, said that Canelo Alvarez with Billy Joe Saunders will happen this year. I don't know. Billy Joe Saunders has been talking up a fight with Demetrius Andrade. I don't know what's going on there. I think it's a fight that the British fans want to see. We want to see how good Billy Joe Saunders is. He's been talking a lot. He's been talking about how he thinks he'll beat Canelo. And listen, everybody is sick and deaf of the talk, just because I think we want to see Billy Joe Saunders in there with an elite fighter. Like I mentioned in a previous video before, that, listen, he's a good fighter. He's got good skills. There's no doubt about that. But we haven't seen him against the best at 168 or 160. Let's name some of the best fighters at 160 and 168, right? At 160, Golovkin, Charlo, Andrade, Jacobs. I know Jacobs has moved up. Derevyanchenko, right? There's probably some others that are escaping my mind at the minute. But let's look at 168. Benavidez, Caleb Plant, Callum Smith, Canelo Alvarez, Benavidez. I've named about 8-9 fighters across two weight classes, right? I probably named about 9-10. Golovkin. How can I forget Golovkin? I forgot to mention his name, Golovkin. So there's Golovkin at middleweight. There's Golovkin, Charlo, Andrade, Derevyanchenko, right? Those are four legit guys. He hasn't faced one of them. Right, Danny Jacobs at the super middleweight. I know Danny Jacobs didn't have a great performance against Rosado, but still a quality fighter. There's Benavidez, there's Caleb Plant, there's Canelo Alvarez, there's Callum Smith, you know, and he hasn't fought any of them. Like, that's what, 8, 9, 10 fighters that are all considered top fighters in across those weight classes. He hasn't fought one. So really, you can understand why the public are so frustrated, and they call Billy Joe Saunders out for not, saying his competition that he's been fighting is poor. Because if we're honest, he hasn't been in there with the top boys at 160 or 168. Now, Willie Monroe and Andy Lee, yeah, these are good fighters. Don't get me wrong, but they're not as good as the fighters that I've just mentioned. You know, Billy Joe Saunders against Andrade is a fight that's been talked about for so long. Billy Joe Saunders against Charlo, that's a great fight. You know, these are fights that are just escaping and no one's talking about it. Now, Billy Joe Saunders said the other day that, you know what, I like Caleb Plant, he's a good fighter, but I don't bother mentioning his name because he's on another broadcaster and with another promoter, and I don't think the fight can be made. That's the problem in boxing. That would be another quality fight. Caleb Plant v Billy Joe Saunders. And actually, I think Billy Joe Saunders would have his hands full against that guy, because he's a natural super middleweight, very fast feet, very fast hands. That guy's a special talent. You know, I don't think he'll beat Canelo, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gives Canelo a shed load of trouble. But I want to see Billy Joe Saunders in there. I don't care if it's not Canelo and Canelo fights. If Canelo fights Avni Yildirim, as Billy Joe Saunders said, that he's not waiting around. So if he's not waiting around, he needs to fight another top guy in around those two weight classes. Either Andrade, because Andrade said he's willing to come up to 168. It's all right, Billy Joe Saunders waiting for Canelo, I just think the fans would... I think it'd look a lot better for Billy Joe Saunders if he fights another top guy like an Andrade and beats Andrade. I just think in the fans' eyes, he'd be seen as more credible before that Canelo fight. And actually, he'd be going into that Canelo fight with a lot of people thinking he's win. Now, Billy Joe Saunders doesn't care what the fans think and whether they think he can beat Canelo. That's irrelevant. But I just think that personally, I don't want to see him wait around till May when he could fight in March, right? Or fight in end of February, as he mentioned, and then fight in May as well. Because let's not forget, Canelo's going to fight in February. Apparently, Canelo wants to fight 3 times this year. He said 3 or 4 times. So he's going to have to fight early part of the year, which is February. So if Canelo can fight in February and then fight in May, why can't Billy Joe Saunders fight in February or early March and then fight in May? You know, so it's not like Canelo will be having any advantage because he'd be fighting as well. Right? Now, Canelo has got a pretty soft touch. I don't think Avni Yildirim will be much of a tough task for Canelo. I think Canelo will beat him quite comfortably. But nevertheless, he's still fighting. And I want to see Billy Joe Saunders fight. But the problem is, we don't want to see him fight. And no disrespect to Martin Murray. Martin Murray was a quality fighter. And I think 4 or 5 years ago, I think that would have been a hard fight for Billy Joe Saunders. Would have been a good fight. But when he fought him, Martin Murray was way past his best. And we don't want to see another fight like that. Because I don't think it does any good for Billy Joe. We need to see him in there with the other top guys at 160 or 168. And hopefully Saunders can deliver that in early, late Feb. It's not gonna be early Feb because we're already in Jan. But late Feb, man, if we can get a good fight for him. But it doesn't seem likely because we're already in the middle of January and there's no discussions. There is probably discussions going on in the back, but are they gonna take a fight? It'll be 6 weeks end of Feb. But Billy Joe Saunders did say he's training. I think he did an interview with IFL a week ago saying that he's training, he's in the gym. So if the opponent can be nailed for this week, he said, and nothing's been nailed. So again, that looks unlikely now as well. I personally, I think he's going to wait for the Canelo fight. But just say if Billy Joe Saunders waits, right, and then doesn't get the Canelo fight, Canelo goes and fights Golovkin, he's left holding his you-know-what. So to be honest with you, I think Billy Joe Saunders needs to get on with his career like he said in the interview. Now, there's one thing saying it, there's another thing doing it. We as fans at the back don't see how frustrating it is for the fighters with the negotiations and how hard it is for them to get certain fights. I can understand that. But I think with Billy Joe Saunders' career, it's just been from start, especially when he became a world champion, it's just been frustrating. He's not managed to get the fights. He's fought David Lemieux, Chris Eubank, Andy Lee, Willie Monroe. These, it's just like I said, I can't believe he's not been in with one of the names that I mentioned earlier on at 160 or 168. He's not been in with even one of them. Not even a Danny Jacobs or a Charles, nobody. And when you see how stacked those divisions are and how many fighters, I've just named you 9 or 10 fighters in across 160 and 168, and he's operating in both divisions. Billy Joe Saunders could easily make middleweight. He's not a big super middleweight at all. And I think when he fights someone like Benavidez or a Canelo, even though Canelo's not a big super middleweight, that's gonna take a toll on him. So personally, I think Billy Joe Saunders' best weight is middleweight. But I don't think Billy Joe Saunders is going to go back down to middleweight because he probably looks at the big money fighters at super middleweight with Canelo. But yeah, it's really frustrating with Saunders, man, because I want to see this guy in some big fights in 2021. And it's kind of like, if it doesn't happen this year, I can't see it happening. It's one of them where you just can't see it happening for Billy Joe Saunders. And I won't be shocked if he just decides, you know what, forget this, I'm just walking away. If he doesn't get a big fight or doesn't fight one of those guys or one or two of those guys by the end of his career, what a waste that would be. Out of those 9 guys I mentioned, he should have fought at least 2 or 3 by now. And by the end of his career, should have fought about 5, 6, maybe all of them. That's what some of the fighters of the past used to do. But it seems like the new generation, these days, fighters just don't fight each other, man. They just swerve and go from there to there, fighting lower level competition. I just don't get it. You need to fight one another. You need to fight one another because that's the brilliant thing about the UFC. I'm not a massive MMA fan, but the thing is with that one guy controls that and he makes the fights. Here, we don't get to see the big fights. We don't get to see, just imagine Billy Joe Saunders v Charlo would be a great fight, but I just know it's not going to get made. 2 world champions, just not going to get made. It's just frustrating that a fight like that, or Billy Joe Saunders against Andre, you just there's discussions, but nothing's happening. And it's just frustrating that, these guys are not fighting one another. They should all be fighting one another. Like Andre and Billy Joe Saunders. Andre's resume is even worse. Let's not talk about his resume. His resume is terrible. And Saunders' resume is not far better. It's better, but it's not far better. Again, he needs to, for me, they both need to fight one another. And they're both good fighters. It would make an interesting fight. But let's see if it happens. Let's move on to the next thing that I wanted to talk about. Apparently, Anthony Joshua v Tyson Fury is 95% done, according to Bob Arum. 95% done. You don't know what to believe. Now, Bob is saying, they've even got the location sorted. Personally, I think the fight's going to happen in Saudi Arabia. I think there's a lot of money there for that, and I think the Saudis will be willing to pay a huge amount of money for that fight. I just think the fight will definitely happen in Saudi Arabia, I think. Obviously, I think, both guys are going to make huge money, crazy money. And if the Wilder situation don't get in the way, then I think the fight's on. I think the fight's on. I think the Usyk situation may be a problem as well. Usyk is trying to force the issue and force the WBO to force Joshua's hand to fight him. But I think if Joshua has to throw away the WBO belt, will throw it away in order to make that fight. Because if the WBO don't want to be part of such a big fight, then that's on them. I personally think that the WBO would want to be part of it, and they might try to convince Usyk to, that he'll get the winner. But I don't know, because then there's that situation with Wilder as well. So it could all get messy. So Usyk's probably thinking he doesn't want to be left in a situation where he's waiting for a year and a half to get a title shot, and he wants that title shot right away. For some reason, I just get the feeling Fury-Joshua is not going to happen. There's going to be something that comes in the way. It just seems to me right now, it just seems too premature. With what's going on with the UK, with the COVID situation, I know this fight's probably not going to happen in the UK, but it was never going to happen in the UK anyway, even if the situation was okay. Because Eddie Hearn already said the money's greater elsewhere. So the fight was never going to happen in the UK. So I personally think that I don't think the fight's going to happen. I hope I'm wrong, because I want to see it badly in the summer. But I just get a feeling that it's too premature. Something doesn't seem right. I think there's going to be something that comes up that stops it. I think it's too premature. But listen, I hope I'm wrong. The feeling that I'm getting, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope it does happen, because I think there's no fight that we want to see more than Joshua Fury now. I think in Britain, that's probably the biggest fight in British boxing history, and probably one of the biggest fights, not probably, is one of the biggest fights in world boxing, if not the biggest, probably the biggest that can be made financially. Probably if Mayweather comes back and fights, Pacquiao, maybe that would do more. But I don't believe there's another fight that's financially more lucrative than Anthony Joshua v Tyson Fury right now. So hopefully they can make it next. But I get the feeling, I get the feeling that it's too premature. I think there's going to be something that crops up that stops this fight from happening. The fact that the fight's not happening in the UK, that was never going to happen anyway. So that was never going to... we all knew that Anthony Joshua v Tyson Fury wasn't going to happen in the UK. That was prior to this COVID stuff. That Eddie Hearn already said in several interviews that the money's, in the Middle East and other countries is far huge than the UK. So we always knew that the fight was going to happen elsewhere. And I know a lot of British fans are not happy, but I think you're going to have to suck it up, because at the end of the day, the fighters aren't going to be willing to take half of their purse, what they would get in Saudi just for the fight to happen in the UK. It just doesn't make any sense. If I'm going to get paid, $100 million in Saudi Arabia, but I'm going to get paid, $45-50 million to fight in the UK, then come on. Any fighter would say, because fighters don't care where the fight happens. They just want to get paid the most money, whoever pays them the most. And if the Saudi fight happening in Saudi Arabia pays them that amount of money, then of course they're going to take the fight in Saudi Arabia. They don't care where the fight happens. The ring's a ring at the end of the day. Yeah, of course they would want to fight in front of their own people, but that doesn't mean that I'd drop $50 million to fight in front of my own people. That's just stupid, really. So for looking at it from a financial point of view, I know some people say, well, they've got so much money, they should take less money and fight in the UK in front of the UK fans who made them. But come on, man, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like, if you put yourself in their position, you wouldn't do that either. Because no money's enough. Money's that type of thing where it's not enough. No money's enough money, right? You could have 200 million, 300 million. It's just not enough. Why do you think these businessmen are so motivated for more and more and more? Because it's never enough. And the same here in this situation, it's never enough. So they're going to look to take the most money they can make, and the most money they can make is in Saudi Arabia, not in the UK. So I don't blame the fighters. For at the end of the day, it's they can, they want to make as much money as they can. But leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think, guys, about this news. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Join my Facebook group if you haven't, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.